I'm Cassandra Silva Sibilin. I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 12th monthly AI in Education Custom Bots GPTs showcase. We have two fantastic speakers joining us today. Jason Gulya, Professor of English and Applied Media at Berkeley College, and James Bedford, Education Specialist in AI at UNSW College in Sydney, Australia. We are a subgroup of the bigger AI in education community. This is a global, truly global network of more than 2,700 educators founded in 2023, dedicated to sharing resources and information about the impact of teaching and learning, impact of AI on teaching and learning. And today our subgroup has the highest number of registrants yet. So a big thanks to all of you for keeping this community thriving. I know you're very excited to hear from our speaker. Oh, wow. Mary is holding up your book, Jason. It got a little blur there, but yes. Yeah, we got the fans in the house. And please keep introducing yourself in the chat. I'm going to pass it on to Jason and James in a moment, I promise. Just something brief to reflect on our group, since we've started a bit over a year ago, and we started really informally, just having a discussion about custom bots and where to build them. And those notes became this collaborative document that is linked to in the subgroup resources. Everything is in the meeting notes, has a lot of things going on, past meetings, recordings. If you are anyone like new to custom bots and you're like, okay, I'm here and I'm excited, but I don't know what they are, raise your hand. All levels are welcome. So this collaborative document has guides and intros and even a past workshop we did, taking you step by step. Yep. But a custom bot can really encompass a lot of things. Sometimes they go by other names. To clarify, they could be called projects, apps, simulations. So with that in mind, sometimes we do trivia. I have just one quick news trivia for all of you. Let's see if anybody knows. There was a platform, this is recently on June 3rd, so just last week, that usually is not talked about as a custom bot platform, but allows for customization, which is what it's all about. And what happened on June 3rd is that they made it possible to share with a public link with anybody, essentially functioning like a custom bot. So it's somewhere that you can add your instructions, add your resources, and share it with anyone. Before, you could only share it with selected users. So now that you can share it with anybody, I think it really opens up the possibilities to use it with colleagues and students in the classroom. Does anyone have a guess of what I'm talking about? So yeah, I knew, see, this is the group, I knew somebody would say it right away. Marcus got it. Thank you. And I think it was through Mary, who's here, that I heard about it, because I saw it. She posted about it on LinkedIn. So I saw Mary posting about it even before it was in the news. We got a really knowledgeable crowd here. Well, speaking of people who are sharing their resources with the public, I am thrilled to introduce Jason Gulya. And I'm not sure exactly when I first heard about Jason, because I've been following his work from early on in the AI and education space. And I'm sure many of you and many have read your book. Jason posts frequently on LinkedIn about his insights, classroom experiments, frameworks. He's been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, among other major publications. He is a professor of English and Applied Media at Berkeley College, teaches on-site and online courses related to writing, humanities, generative AI. Recently published his second book titled Artificial Intelligence, Real Literacy. And after Jason, we're going to turn it over to James and do a combined Q&A. So please feel free to jot down your reactions and questions in the chat as we go. And now, Jason, thank you so much for visiting our group today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and I'm so excited to see people in the chat who I know and have had ongoing conversations with. And so what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna try to stick to the 25 minutes as planned, 'cause I think we want to do 25 minutes of me, 25 minutes of James, and then do a joint thing. So really what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about just to kind of set the context about how I use custom chatbots in my classroom. So one of my big use cases early on, and I think a lot of us did this with playing with custom GPTs, was for my own use, right? So once I was running a prompt again and again, played with creating a custom chatbot so that I didn't have to keep putting in that prompt. And I think a lot of us started there. I certainly did. I do want to focus on something just a little bit different. I want to focus on student-facing chatbots. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I think that this is, even as it is right now, one of the really good use cases for this technology, especially depending on the modality in which we teach. So if you are teaching online, this is a great way, at least in my experience, to kind of boost engagement. But I do think we have to be very, very purposeful with it. And this comes with anything student facing. We have to be very intentional about what we want to get out of it, and whether they're actually putting students in a space where they're continuing to have that kind of productive struggle, right? They're trying to learn something. One of the ways that I use this technology is for role playing. And I think that will become a little bit clearer as I go along. I'll actually show you one, maybe two of the bots, depending on how time goes. And I will give you, and I will just pop this in the chat, I will give you the prompt that's working in the background because I've done a lot of playing with it. And I do think one of the big things about custom GPTs is that really a lot of it just comes down to that one message prompt. In some ways, and I have to constantly remind myself of this, when I create a custom chatbot, as opposed to, say, just using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or anything like that, is I don't have the benefit of follow-up messages. When I use an AI bot, or if I'm just using it for myself, I want to create something or brainstorm, I often keep that first prompt pretty short because then I iterate, I redirect it, I build from there. But the big thing with custom chatbots is you don't really have that cushion. So, and I know I mentioned this already, in my classes, I often use custom GPTs as for role-playing scenarios. So giving students a chance to move beyond just the theory and actually practice something. And one of the best ways I like to use this technology is to flip the way that my students often think about generative AI. For the vast majority of my students, they come in approaching chatbots as search engines. That there doesn't seem to be a huge difference between interacting with ChatGPT versus a Google search engine. Not all of them are there, but I'd say the vast majority of my students kind of bring that approach over. And I understand why. I don't blame them for that at all. So what I try to do is I try to create scenarios that flip that script. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So, what I mean by that is that you can create custom chatbots that actually put pressure, hopefully productive pressure, right? That helps them learn. You can keep it on the student. And in one of my classes, and this will be me kind of segueing into a specific example, because I've been talking for about 5 minutes to give the context. And I do want to show you some things that I've built. And I'll certainly focus on one. I might be able to show you a couple, depending on timing. So, in one of my classes, I teach a fully online art of film class. And it is fully online and fully asynchronous. And that can be extremely challenging. So, for example, I can't require students to hop on a Zoom. Not allowed to do that, right? I can't say, all right, Wednesday, 4 o'clock, everyone, let's get on a Zoom and chat. That's off the table. The course has to be designed so that a student can do it anytime they want. If I want to have a student meet with me, and I do this sometimes, meet with me through a Zoom. I have to meet their schedule. I can't have everyone do it at the same time. I have to really, really work with the student and say, let's figure it out. But in general, I really can't have synchronous meetings. So in the past, for the final for that course, I had students find a movie and I told them they can choose anything that we didn't cover in the course and design a 3 to 5 minute lesson. So they would go and think, they would basically take on the role of as a teacher, as a professor, and design something. And I gave them a lot of leeway about how to do this. Some of them did podcasts, some of them did videos, some of them did PowerPoints, right? So whatever they wanted. So in the past, that was the end. That was the end of the activity. The student went, they found that movie, they created that lesson, and then they went on their merry way because there wasn't a ton you could do on top of that, short of having everyone come into a Zoom and say, let's all go and we're going to teach each other, which, for that class is off the table. It's not actually something I'm supposed to do at my institution. So that's where a custom chatbot came in. And I'm going to pop it in here in case anyone wants to play with it. And I will, on the resources that Cassandra's sending around, I will pop it in there so you can see it. I'm going to give you the chatbot so you can play with it. And I'm also going to give you, in a little bit, I'll give you the prompt. And I'll show this to you too. The prompt that's actually functioning in the background. So I just put it in the chat right now. So now this does require an OpenAI account. You can have a free account. It should let you use it. But it does require you to log in, or it might prompt you to log in. And I'll give some very quick free resources if you want to create custom chatbots, but don't want to pay. There are ones out there. There are some limitations that come with it, as is always the case. So I'm going to share my screen, and this should just take a second. All right, there we go. Now, can you see my screen and everything? It's doing what it's supposed to. Cool. James gave me the thumbs up, so awesome. All right, so this is the one that I sent you. So for that course, I asked students to take that lesson and teach it. And what I did was I created a custom chatbot that was designed around 10-year-old me. So I thought about, if as a 10-year-old, what kind of questions would I ask? What would it look like? And I actually gave this chatbot a set of characteristics. It's not entirely like me when I was 10, but is sort of close, especially in terms of how I typed the kinds of questions I asked. And I was a weird 10-year-old kid, and I have my students go in and actually teach this bot. So and I will kind of do a run through so you kind of see what this looks like. Because the goal here is, again, to flip the script so that students aren't coming to the chatbot for answers. The chatbot is coming to them for answers. So I'm going to go, and either you can say hi, or you can actually just hit the hi, let's go. And of course, it's going to take a second. All right. And it will go, and it is going to set the stage for them. So all the instructions are actually embedded in the chatbot, so that if a student, say, missed something in our LMS, didn't look at the instructions, that's okay, because here they're going to be reminded of what they are doing. All right, so and it makes everything very personal, right? So reference to me, if you create a custom chatbot for students, I highly recommend really, really anchoring it in, using your own name, using your course if you can, right? That gives it a sense that we are now beyond just a generic chatbot, right? Something that's actually been designed with care. And so it gives a student the full instructions, a 1 to 2 paragraph summary of your mini course, da da da. Do you have any questions? Here, often my students will say no. I'll just say no to kind of go there. If they do have questions, I actually have information in there to start to address them, a lot of the FAQs. Otherwise, if it's something outside, it should redirect the student to actually reach out to me. So here it says, cool, and this is kind of writing like 10-year-old me a little bit. Hit me with a 1 to 2 paragraph summary of your mini course. Let's see what you got. All right, so not totally 10-year-old me, but starting that transition in terms of just in terms of language. All right, so I'm going to go and I don't know. Let's see. I am creating a mini lesson on, we'll just do the Avengers. All right, so I am arguing that, whatever, Hulk is the best. All right. So here, obviously, a student's argument should be more advanced than that. But this is just to give you a sense of how this works. So I'm going to go through, do that, and it should, we'll see if it does this. All right, cool. So it gives a little bit of a nudge. All right, so it gets a sense that, oh, the student is not quite there yet, still started developing that. All right, so now go ahead and it kind of, this is the nudge here. Give me a quick summary of your mini lesson. What do you say to prove Hulk's the best? What's your main argument, right? Because something isn't quite there. And so one of the things the chatbot does pretty well, and I'll show you the prompt that does this. If a student gives, say, a paragraph long blurb that seems pretty good, seems to make sense, and everything that we really want in a mini lesson, the response here from ChatGPT, from this chatbot, is different. But here, the student needs that nudge. All right, so I'm going to say, and again, I'm just going to show how this works. I'm going to focus on how everything changes when the Hulk actually transforms. Oh, if I can actually spell. Before that point, they are overmatched. Remember the movie? They're being sort of destroyed, and the Hulk has that turn where he says, I'm always angry, and that's the big turning point of the battle. All right, cool. I'm done nerding out over it. So I'm going to say that. So I'm going to say, he is the glue of the group, but no one recognizes it. So here, you can see, even just working through it, that it starts to get a little bit closer to that mini lesson. Not everything there, still probably some work to be done. That is okay. But you'll go, all right, so, and this is like really going to me, okay, hold up. So you're saying Hulk is kind of like the secret weapon, like everything is going bad until he shows up for real. But how is he the glue if he's over smashing stuff, right? So wouldn't the glue be someone like Cap who always trying to get the team to work together, right? Actually brings it together, whereas Hulk kind of does his own thing. So this is how it's going to work. The bot is there to help the student either extend their argument, but also to put pressure on it. Right. So here, like, wouldn't Captain America be a better option here? Right. And the big tip in the language is that it calls it Cap, right? Because it's trying to act a little bit like me, at least as much as it's been told to. And so a student goes through this process. And at the end, the student actually gets a scoring rubric. So the goal here is to have a student, have a dialogue, basically teach 10-year-old me. And again, this is an example of a custom chatbot coming to them for answers, putting pressure on their ideas, right? So this is all about not getting rid of productive struggle, but actually upping it or giving students a space when that can actually happen. And so at the end, a student will give, the bot will give the student a provisional grade. It's just numbers. It doesn't give letters, right? It might say, all right, so engaging with my questions, you get a 3.5 out of 5, that sort of stuff, and gives formative feedback. Now, when it does that, that is not the end of the conversation for me. This is not an example of an AI just grading a student. What I do is in the LMS as a follow-up, I ask students, one of the many questions I ask them is, what did you think about the grading? Was it accurate? Right? So it becomes an access point into that conversation. And some of them will say, oh, it wasn't really accurate here because here's an instance when I did something that it said I didn't do. And so it becomes, all of this is about setting up a conversation, right? So that students can have that conversation through an LMS, or, and I did this with select students, especially if I thought it would benefit them, or if they wanted to do it, I invited students to come and talk to me through Zoom synchronously, right? This was optional, and actually have a follow-up to the lesson. So that gave me a very good sense of what happened here. And so the real idea here is to get as much information about what the student is absorbing, what the student, how they are applying the course material, and how I can step in, how I can help them. And at the end, my students give the entire transcript. This is an example of a grade the transcript exercise so that I'm able to go through and really get a sense of not just how they're thinking through course content, but how they are how they're doing in terms of AI literacy. Because when I do this activity, some students know perfectly well how to push against the bot, right? Or kind of nudge the bots. And other students really, really struggle with it. And that's really helpful for me to see that discrepancy, see that divide, because that I can come in and support them more. So I have been talking for 16 minutes. I'm trying to be very regimented because I don't want to steal any of James' time because I want to hand it over to him and let him do his thing. So I'm going to show you the entire prompt. And this is something that I've done. I'm actually going to give me 1 second. I'm going to pop out of share screen for a moment because I actually don't know if I can do it while in shared screen. In the chat right now, I'm going to give you the prompt. So I just uploaded this to Google Doc. So feel free to take it, share it, use it, revise it. And now I will go back into share screen. All right, so and you can see, right, the big thing here is being very specific with the prompt. So a lot of this will be very familiar to a lot of us if you've done prompting, right? So I go through and I let it know the role. I always like doing these little tags. It actually helps me probably more than the bot. It lets me know that what I'm doing with a specific section. I gave it the role, I gave it the style, and that you can fully personalize. You can really create a prompt that hopefully is designed to put pressure on the students and get them to practice on, right? This is all about role playing. This is all about bridging that gap between theory and practice, right? Learning through doing the thing. That's the real benefit here in my mind, which in the past is just extremely difficult to do. And now, even in an online course, I can have some version of it. So I have the role, I have the style, and this is where I put all this information, right? I don't give it too much about me, but a clear, direct language of a 10-year-old student in an American public school. Avoid taking over the conversation. You're curious, which means that, right? And I always like doing that. If you give it a word like curious, tell it what that means. It doesn't necessarily know what that means, right? Which means your default is asking questions and throwing out competing ideas. All right. Don't blab. Keep your questions and responses short, right? Don't want it generating full paragraphs. So this is really just walking it through the style. And then if you are creating a custom chatbot, the big things to figure out, and I think the only way to do this is through creating the prompt and then iterating it, running it, see what you need to do, those steps. Right, so here I give it the instructions. I will say hi. You will follow the steps listed below in precise order from step 1 to step 5. Do not skip a step. And something like this starts to really not just control how the chatbot is interacting with the student, but what it is doing, right? The specific process you want to go through. And this really does make a big difference. And a lot of it is when you create that list of steps, going through, running it, see what happens, and then you get a sense of whether it's skipping a step, how it's doing it. And so you can see, and I'll scroll down, that, and I had these brackets are doing a ton of work for me. I tell it step 1, do all this, da 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 da. Right? If I ask any questions, answer them to the best of your ability. Keep asking until all questions are answered. Then proceed to step 2. And again, that bracket lets it know, right? That is done. Move on to the next thing. And this is something that I've refined really over the last several months of just playing with this. And so being very, very clear about what exactly you want the bot to do and what the individual steps are makes a big difference. All right, and so You can see it goes through step two, goes to step three. And then here, and I don't think this is emphasized enough, right? So when we create a custom chatbot, there's a lot you can do with style. But another thing that's really helpful is if you want to make it say an exact thing at the exact time, you can do that. You can actually build that into a prompt. So here, when I get to step four, say these words. Great. Now let's take a timeout so that this allows me to create a branching scenario. All right, so we've now reached the minimum for this role-playing exercise. Did you want to keep going or did you want to stop? All right, and the reason I need those exact words is I need to create a branch off in the custom chatbot. Right? If I say I want to keep going, go to step five. So it's going to pop down here. If I say I want to stop, go to step six. So this allows for a more flexible chatbot. So depending on what a student says, it might jump to the next step. It might jump one beyond it, right? And kind of see how they link up. So if I say, I want to keep going, it's going to go to step five. Then once that is done, it's going to go to step six. So this is all to give you a sense of the architecture and how it works. And then at the end, I ask it to provide the feedback in table form and walk students through just how, according to the chatbot, it did. And again, this is meant to start the conversation. And so that gives everyone a sense of the prompt design a little bit. I think the big thing here is getting a sense of the steps. I think that if we're creating custom chatbots that are really just focused on role and style, that can be very helpful, but it only gets you so far. And this whole process allows me to put pretty strict parameters. Again, it's a student-facing activity, so we do want to be somewhat careful with it. It allows me to put very strict parameters over what the bot is doing and how it's doing it. And that's really important to me, especially as students are using this technology. And then, the other big thing is that because of the premise of the chatbot, which is all about turning things on its head. So the student is actually providing answers. Here, yes, hallucinations are important, but they're less important because the student isn't, hopefully, approaching the AI as a source of information. Right? It's more of it's prompting them as opposed to them prompting it. Now, I am going to show you another trick, and I'm right around 22 and a half minutes. All right. So one trick, and some of us may know this program a little bit. So I'm going, and it's not a plug, but they do have something that's very, very cool and helpful if you're struggling with how to do this. So Boodlebox AI. And you can have a paid version. They do have a free line as well. And I believe, I'd have to confirm this, but I believe you can, even with the free version, create a custom bot. And so I'm going to show you this. And the reason I'm going to do it is, so this is Boodlebox AI, and I can pop it in the link. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show you how I can navigate there. So I'll go to Google, go to Googlebox AI. So it's this thing here. And you can create an account. Again, I believe you can have a decent, you can certainly play with the chatbots with the free version. So this will get you here. And the reason I'm showing you this is not even to use the program. It's to see the template they give you, which is a way to start. If you're still just getting used to this, it's a way to get started. So bot builder, and you're going to build a bot. And whatever, I'm just going to do check one, blah, blah, blah. All right, put that in there. So this is what it's going to do. It's going to show you the instructions. And here, and you can use this, right? You can copy this, right? It's a pretty decent structure, a pretty decent template for your custom chatbot prompt. You can go through the bot expertise and role, the learning objectives, what you wanted to do, the bot workflow, which is kind of what I walked you through, right? I have my own sort of version of it, but going through here step one, here step two, here step three. And so you can fully customize these, right? You can change all these here if you want. You can edit them, and you can just keep testing the bot on the right side. So if you're looking for something just to like get that template down at least a little bit, that is one way to do it. And let's see, I am just under 25 minutes. So I'm going to pop out of my stop share because I do want to hand it over to James. So that was one particular bot that I created for my students, which is very much about role play, trying something out, stepping in as a teacher and getting that feedback. And then another thing I do, and I didn't get a chance to show this to you, but another one I like doing is a contrarian chatbot. If I am teaching students to create an argument, I ask them to create the argument on their own, and I will create a custom, and I have done this. I give them a custom chatbot that is made to push against them, that takes the other side, and they essentially have a debate with it. And at the end, and you kind of see it's a very similar kind of premise. The goal here is to put pressure on the student, let them rethink, use the bot as a chance to rethink through their own ideas, and then they give me that chat. And again, that gives me so much information about their argumentation process, how they can push against a counter argument, how they're thinking about evidence, because it's all about bringing what they can to the table. And that gives me a lot of information about how they're working through the concepts and everything else. So I'll throw that out as another potential use case for these kind of custom chatbots. And thank you so much. I am done, and I'm going to hand it to James.
Alrighty, thanks, Jason. That was awesome. I'll jump straight in and get started. Uh, it's a big audience, so I'm glad there's a lot of people here. I think we broke the record, so that's a good thing. Um, I'm from Australia. It's 6 a.m. here. It's quite early. Oh, 6:30 now. And it's very cold, so I don't know what the weather's like where you guys are from at the moment, but I'm freezing. But I think something that I wanted to kind of cover today was really my journey into custom GPTs and how I came about them. My role has been really interesting over the last few years. I've been working with students and teachers, helping them understand AI tools and what they mean for education primarily. And my background is in humanities creative writing. So I'm not from a computer science background. I'm not from a sort of a technical specialist background. I'm just a humanities student who never left university. Um, and so my experience with custom GPTs has been really interesting because I found that my background in creative writing and the humanities has proven very useful in instructing and designing these bots. Um, right now, if you can, communicate, if you can write, if you can talk and instruct, you can basically make a really good chatbot. And that's one of the really exciting prospects that I kind of wanted to share today. But my sort of foray into custom GPTs started with a module that we were asked to build for the university. So I was tasked with building a sort of AI literacy module for UNSW, and we have about 6,000 staff, so there's quite a few people there. And my job was to sort of come up with a sort of a course to explain what generative AI was, how LLMs worked. And this was early on, around 2023. And initially, we proposed a sort of basic Moodle course, which you do and you tick a box and you go and learn that material. But my director at the time asked if we could maybe look into this idea of custom GPTs, which were quite new at the time. This is around ChatGPT 3.5, so sort of early days. And so we started to look into the idea of custom GPTs as a sort of learning experience. And we asked the question, can you put a sort of course module experience within the custom GPT format? And the answer is you sort of can, but you sort of can't. But we tried our best. And I'll share the prompt with you because it took a long time to sort of get right. But perhaps rather than talk about it, I'll share it with you. So I'll share my screen and we'll jump in. I'm not a Zoom person, so let me just try and find this. Here we go, ChatGPT. Okay, so the bot we designed was called GAIL. It stands for Generative AI Literacy. And basically what it was, we designed a sort of a multi-layered experience. So there's three parts to this, what is essentially a module. And when users begin this module, this bot is going to walk them through a series of content that we've developed. So we filmed videos in the studio with experts in AI and education talking about the content. and this bot actually links to those modules and those videos. And we also had a sort of Socratic tutoring approach, which Jason shared with you before, which gets the user to sort of think and reflect and ask questions. And then at the end, to sort of tie everything together. Oh, and there's a few games in there and things developed by Google that it sort of links out to. But at the end of this module, there's a sort of a quiz that is built into the knowledge files. And that quiz is the same every time. It doesn't change based on the user's interactions, because we found with ChatGPT, when it sort of generates its own questions, they tend to be sort of hit or miss questions. I haven't tested the capabilities of ChatGPT's quiz writing skills like lately, so it might have improved, but at the time it sort of wasn't great at generating its own questions, so we had to include those in the knowledge files. So if you I'll just give you a quick rundown of how this works, and I'll share this prompt. This took a long time to get going, by the way. Many interactions. It was sort of my first introduction to custom GPTs, and a lot of fine tuning of the instructions. So this is a lot of back and forth, trying the module, seeing that it wouldn't work, and then having to go back and change the instructions. And the other reason that there was such a back and forth process was because it was a sort of quite a convoluted thing to get a custom GPT to do, which was to provide a sort of course outline sort of format. So it's introducing the module. It's talking to the user right now, saying what's going to be in the module. So we're going to learn how GenAI works, discover how students are using it, and find out if ChatGPT can improve your assessments. So the idea here was this is for educators, to introduce them to AI, but also show them how AI is getting better, and it can do a lot of the assessment tasks that we're currently giving students. So it's just asked me, and this is quite interesting, what's your current level of knowledge around AI? Now, this is sort of all smoke and mirrors. When you answer this question, I've found it doesn't really change the experience too much, even though I've asked it to. Now, that could be due to its memory recall about previous conversations. I don't know. But it is a sort of self-reflective moment to ask the user, where do you see yourself in this sort of current landscape of AI? So for now, we're just going to put expert, even though I feel less and less like that every day. And we're going to ask it to go through the module. So it now gives us a brief definition of what generative AI is, some examples, and then it moves into a more interactive part, which is choosing a fictional character to explain generative AI. So, and this was, again, early on, this is like 2023. So people weren't even aware that ChatGPT could sort of jump into different styles or personas. And this was kind of revealing that to people at the time. And what better way to teach staff, how to use generative AI than to throw them into a custom GPT experience. So, so I'm going to put, what's a good one? Morpheus. Morpheus is a good one. I always like to do that as an example. It's very deep, philosophical. Morpheus from the Matrix. Let's see if it gets it, actually. It might think another Morpheus, but it should be good. Okay, so here we have a quote from the film, and Morpheus, or ChatGPT explaining generative AI in the voice of Morpheus, which I think is quite cool. Looking through the survey, actually, interestingly enough, just for complete disclosure, this was sort of a hit and miss activity. Some people didn't actually enjoy having generative AI explained to them in a fictional character. So I'm not sure why, because I thought it was cool, but it was sort of like a 50-50 thing. So for some people, it was like, yeah, that's cool, but others were like, I'd rather you just tell me what generative AI is. So it's sort of a hit and miss activity, but cool nonetheless. Now, the thing here is that it's asking me if that explanation resonated, and is there anything you'd like me to clarify? And so that was the sort of interesting element of the module. If a user was sort of having trouble with an explanation or a part of the module, they could ask the bot for help. Or more importantly, and this is inbuilt into the instructions, if the user was going off topic and started sort of going off the rails a little bit, the bot would sort of bring them back into the content and sort of redirect the conversation. So what was really interesting about this is that there was sort of an opportunity to kind of branch away where necessary from the topic to sort of help understand it. And then there was a way to sort of come back into the module by the bot just sort of seeing that the conversation was going a different direction. So I won't go through the whole thing. But maybe I'll just get to the next section, which is, I think, a video. So yeah, we had a short video which it links to, and this is going back to Jason's point about, like, if you want it to say the exact thing, you can. A lot of these interactions and parts of this module are it saying what we asked it to say. So it's a little more kind of regimented. And so, yeah, if you click on that link, it takes you out to the video. You watch the video, you come back and you talk about it and reflect on it with the bot. I won't go through the entire module. I'll send you the prompt, but this goes through another 2 or 3 sort of modules or parts, and then it wraps up with the quiz, and it generates you like a image of a cool trophy with your name on it and stuff. And yeah, so it's a kind of fun experience. Now, the cool thing about this is, like, I've done this this sort of process. I'm calling them AI guided learning modules. That's sort of the name I've sort of come up with, because it's AI is guiding the student or the teacher on the side, and it's a sort of module format. The cool thing about this is you can do this module or modules like this in voice mode. So aside from being able, you won't be able to watch the videos, but I've been able to, like, drive in my car, play this bot, and other versions of it for different topics, and it will walk me through a series of concepts to help me understand, and I can interact with it and have back and forth questions, which is really cool to be able to do, just, you know, driving to work and things. So I use AI guided learning modules all the time to help me learn concepts and develop my understanding of different ideas, and students are doing this as well. There was a recent study done, which you may have seen, from the Harvard Business Review, which is analyzing how students are using artificial intelligence. And I think I can share the screen here, but this is basically an image of that. I'll put this in the chat, but because I'm not showing my screen right now, I just realized. But the use cases for generative AI have sort of shifted from 2024, from like basic use cases of like generating ideas, coming up with, brainstorming ideas and things, to more nuanced use cases where students are now using it for more like companionship, helping them organize their life. And the number 4 usage was enhanced learning. So students are actually using generative AI and things like custom GPTs to enhance their own learning. We saw this recently with OpenAI. They posted on their LinkedIn, OpenAI in Education, a bunch of students adding in like exam material into custom GPTs to then study that material and develop their understanding of those exam topics, which is really cool. And this is sort of where I see custom GPTs and AI in general going. This isn't replacing the friction required to learn stuff. This isn't replacing reading or teachers. It's extracurricular activity. So it's, in a way, students are now becoming learning designers themselves. They're able to create learning experiences that aren't better than what a teacher could do by any means, but they're supplementary. So students can go away and interact with these things and develop their learning as a result. And I think that's a really cool thing. So I'm going to share the prompt with you that we developed. It's quite long. It's like the entire token limit for the instructions, but you're more than welcome. It's available with Creative Commons license, so you can change it, tweak it, do whatever you like with it, make it your own. I'll share that with you guys. But I wanted to jump over to another really cool tool, which I've been playing around with, which is Poe, which I think someone mentioned in the chat, which was kind of cool. Now, Poe is a sort of similar custom GPT kind of experience, but there's a bit more to it in terms of its interactivity. So I'm just going to share my screen. One sec. There we go. Where are we? There we go. Cool. Okay, so there's a limit to the usage. I'm on a free account. I'm not. I can only pay for so many subscriptions. But the cool thing about Poe is that you can develop apps, which are sort of interactive web apps, which again can create learning experiences for students. Now, I just did this yesterday. I wanted to sort of show you and run you through this as I did it, but I can't because I ran out of tokens. So I'm going to have to show you what I built yesterday, but this is something you could do in your own time as well. And this is, weirdly enough, a really cool example. And you'll see why in a minute. So this is that paper that got published recently. Jason's probably familiar with it. Others probably here may have read it. The Apple reasoning paper. So does AI reason? Is it really thinking? Blah blah blah, that sort of thing, which we won't go into today. I put this paper into Poe, and all I asked it was turn this article into an interactive web app. Okay, so I pasted the article, and that was my only instruction. That's all I gave it. It did some thinking. It looked through the paper. I'm not even sure what model it uses to do this. Actually, that would be interesting if someone could fact check that. It created the code for this website, and I think it pretty much one-shotted it. There was another step I added somewhere. Oh, that's right. I asked it to include the games that get mentioned in the paper. So, and this is the kind of cool thing that kind of goes beyond just interacting with a textbook. This sort of takes it a little bit further. The cool thing with this was that it was able to talk about the paper, break it down into key concepts, the key findings, what it did, the graphs that were mentioned in the paper. There's an interactive graph here that you can look at and grapple with. These are the different ways that these models were tested. The different puzzle games that you may be familiar with: Tower of Hanoi, the river crossing one, the Blocks World classic puzzles. And this is the graph from the actual paper that it's developed. But the cool thing it was able to do was to allow students to, or whoever's reading the paper, to play the games that were in the study. I forgot what Tower of Hanoi was until I played it, so that was kind of cool. So you can click on play the game, and then you can actually do the game that was talked about in the paper. So this is Tower of Hanoi. You've got to get the blocks the other side, and they have to stack on top of each other. I think that's really cool. Like I as a educator, amazing, but as a student, like I would just think that is amazing. Being able to really have an experience of the games that the models were sort of being tested with, just takes that the kind of reading to a whole new element of. And again, this is extracurricular stuff. I'm not saying students should just plug in an article into this and make a game out of it and go on that merry way. I think this is about extracurricular activities. It's students interacting with readings in a way that they've never been able to interact with them before. And this is very early days. This is like 3 years into generative AI being publicly available, and we're already able to do these sorts of things. So if you're, again, this was one-shotted. I didn't do, well, 2 shots actually. The second, and when I say shots, I mean prompts that I gave it. This is something you could do yourself. It's something you could instruct your students to do. You can also share these with your students. So one of the cool things I've been doing is I try to, if I want to share something with a student, obviously I vet it. I look through the content, make sure it's all there. And then I'm sure that the material is of a good quality. I can then publish that, share that link with students. They can jump in, play around with it, and use it, which I think is really, really useful. So that's Poe. I won't go into any more examples of Poe because that's pretty much what I want to say with regards to it. But I've tried also, actually, maybe I'll share another one I designed similar to the GAIL experience in Poe, which was a generative AI literacy module. Now, what surprised me with this was I asked it to make an interactive generative AI literacy module. I've done a ton of these. You may have done a ton of them yourselves. And what was really surprising, actually, what surprised me about this was the quality of the content. The interactivity is great, but actually the quality of the content, there must be a lot of generative AI courses out there that it was trained on, because it did a really good job of just constructing a beginner course for understanding generative AI. So this is the course here. It walks you through what you'll learn, what you'll understand. There's little sort of definitions of GenAI, difference between discriminative and generative, types of generative AI, and then there's little boxes here where you can ask AI to explain generative AI, a little interaction here, and then there's knowledge checks that you can do. There's visual sort of displays of how LLM architecture works, and just the way that these modules are able to kind of be put together and help students understand like really thorny concepts, I think is really useful. I think there's a quiz at the end, but again, this is like one shot. So what I think is really exciting about these sorts of activities is that we can share them with our students. This is a free tool. Obviously, we have to be, careful with free tools. If it's free, you're usually the product. But the fact is that these tools are like freely available to students with an email account, and educators can jump in and design their own resources. Students can design their own resources and share them with one another. And I think it's a really fantastic way to just to sort of build that extracurricular knowledge based on, our education experience. I'm doing pretty good for time. I've got about 6 minutes left, so I might also share. I've got to plug Notebook. I mean, I can't not plug Notebook, but I'll share one more thing I did with Gemini Pro. And this was in a tool that we use called Simtheory. Simtheory is similar. It's sort of like a sandbox of different LLMs. And basically what I did, I tried the same prompt with Poe that I tried with Poe, which was basically to create an interactive web app that teaches me about the key concepts from this article. I used Walter Benjamin's Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, if anyone's familiar with that. It's an essay I know well. And it made a sort of little website, which I just found myself just in awe thinking about last night, that it came up with this idea and how it did it. The website's not that good, right? It's basically just a kind of some of the key concepts. It misses a lot of the key concepts, but it had this this visual idea of explaining like the loss of aura, which is this kind of concept within Walter Benjamin's work that really ties well to AI, which is this idea that when you photograph something, it loses its aura. It doesn't quite have the effect it would have looking at the actual artifact in a museum, as it was. And so it came up with this kind of visual display of that idea. So this slider bar here, you'll notice the Mona Lisa getting more and more blurry. So as we move towards mass reproduction and into the photographic print, we start to see, the Mona Lisa start to blur. We go further to a digital image and it's even blurrier. All the way to an internet meme, which now is like completely lost all recognizability. So this just sort of stuck with me as a kind of fun thing I did last night. But the kind of that experience for me now, I'm going to go away thinking, that I now kind of understand Benjamin's idea of aura better now because of that unique experience that I never would have come up with on my own. And that's the kind of cool thing about these sort of tools, is that they're creating learning experiences that you may not have thought about yourself. And that's fantastic. I think that's really useful. So one last plug. This is definitely, I find, a bit of a pluggy session, but I do want to talk to NotebookLM, because if there's just one person in here that hasn't used it, I've done my job. Now, NotebookLM is Google's tool. It was mentioned in the chat before. You can now publicly share links. It's fantastic. I was able to create even lengthier podcasts than I have in the past. It was up to 76 minutes long. So for those that don't know, you can create podcasts with NotebookLM based on the material that you give it. So more than just, this is material that you instruct it to draw on. You can add in like links, you can add in YouTube videos, you can add in text, you can add in files, and it will draw on that information to synthesize, give you a kind of overview, and then if you click load on this, it'll generate a sort of podcast audio conversation. There's also, if you haven't tried this, do it. It's very exciting technology, a bit scary the first time you hear it, but very authentic sounding. There's parts of it that are sort of hit and miss, but I found testing this with articles that I'm quite familiar with, the accuracy for me was like really high compared to other tools. So I really enjoyed using ChatGPT for accuracy in terms of LLMs. Sorry, there's someone hot micing. It's going to be tough not hot micing with 120 people here, but yeah, in terms of using generative AI, NotebookLM is a fantastic tool. You can also add in the interactive mode, which is like talking with the podcasters, so you can actually interject the podcast that is happening and ask questions and be like an audience member, which is crazy. But yeah, the ability to like load conversation, I think, is really useful. I use them all the time to go through readings that I've done to sort of help me better understand those readings. I catch a train to and from my work, so it's a bit of a trek in. So I get time to kind of listen to podcasts now. That's sort of what I do. And yeah, really useful tool that you can share now freely with your students. I've got 1 minute left. I'm just going to finish early so we have time for questions. But I'm going to wrap up there. I'm going to send through all those things in that I've just mentioned, the links to those tools and those articles. So you'll get a ton of links you can look at or not look at your pleasure. But I'll wrap up there, and maybe we'll have time for some questions.
Our brains are buzzing. The chat is buzzing. Thank you, Jason, for already answering a bunch of questions there. I'll highlight one funny one. Jason, Nadia said, have you thought, this might be a more psychological question. Have you thought of like having a 4-year-old instead or another age? How did you pick a 10-year-old? How did you pick a 10-year-old for your exercise?
Random. I don't know if it was random, but I was trying to like pick an age when I still had that just youthful curiosity, inquisitiveness, but one that wasn't too young. But yeah, I could certainly have done 4, 6, 8, and sort of just cater from there. But I don't know if. Yeah, other than that, I don't know if there was like a specific reason I chose 10. It just seemed like a neat one to try and see how it worked.
Yeah,
I don't have a better
I
answer
mean,
than that. It's true.
yeah, yeah. And James, quick one. Did you say 76 minutes for the audio? Did I hear
Yeah,
that right?
yeah. It was. I didn't know they could go that long either, but I just
I
tried a podcast the other day, and it was 76 minutes long. So
Well, that is one long podcast. Yeah, I didn't know. I've never
mm.
seen anything past like 18 or 19 minutes. So
Yeah,
on no
me either.
podcast.
So
That is serious. Um, would um would Jason, James, did you see something else in the chat that you want to address? Would anyone like to ask a question live? We still have about 10 more minutes, and I know so much out there, but I'm gonna open it up. And James, do you want to stop sharing your screen?
oh,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you. Yeah, no.
I just wanted to say thank you to you guys because it's really neat for other people that are trying to create their own chatbots to hear like to hear and to see the actual pathing of somebody else's mind doing it. And then it gives other people ideas so they can go, oh, I'm going to try that. Like, things that everybody's like, it's almost like you're a little island unto yourself when you're trying to do it. And, you're just interacting with your own chatbot. But so like it's neat seeing other people's vibing creation going on in their
Yeah,
heads. Thanks, guys.
yeah. Thank you, Mary. And that's what it's about. Yeah, sharing these ideas and trying something new. And speaking of sharing and trying things, James, would you be willing to share your prompt for the poll? We had a lot of asks for that.
Yes.
And
Um,
that's
I
awesome.
yeah, I'll put that in the chat.
Thanks. Any others want to ask a live question or bring us back to something you had in the chat that we didn't get to because there was so much.
I did see one that was really interesting. I lost it as it was moving.
Okay.
I think it was Jana who asked it. I'm sorry if I'm messing up the name, but it's about what we're uploading to these programs, right? And this is something that I'm gonna sort of just say like just be very very careful with copyright with what you're putting into these systems. And one of the things that we're constantly learning is once textbooks or copyrighted materials being put into whatever program, And it's very, very hard to know what happens to them, what these programs are actually doing with those materials, if they're infringing copyright. And now we are at that moment when, I mean, and James mentioned this too, that, I mean, it's the early days that ChatGPT is it's a little shy of 3 years. And so, I mean, there are still hosts of lawsuits out there in terms of trying to figure out what this all means for copyright, what this means for intellectual property. We don't know how it's going to work yet. And add something to that, not to just amp up that paranoia as well. But recently, there was a court order with the New York Times lawsuit with OpenAI that they're going to store your information. It is undeletable. It doesn't matter what level of account you have. You can have the whatever $2,000 a month version, like whatever. It doesn't matter what version, because of the lawsuit. There's now a court order saying that they have to save all of that information because they have to be able to bring it out, because that's actually a result of the New York Times lawsuit. They decided that, well, we need to save those so we can actually figure out what's happening, what's going into training data, and things like that are just ongoing and changing. So you need to be careful, not just with what is being uploaded, but if we are asking students to use these chatbots and requiring it of coursework, being aware of like what that means for their privacy. Now, there are programs you can get that have a little bit more safeguards, but you're going to pay for, right? You're not going to do it for free. The free version, that data, that information is being harvested and sold and all that. So I guess all I want to say is just be very, very careful with it, because you want to make sure that you're as much as you can not doing things you shouldn't be doing. And I mean, I live off of a lot of open access things, right? Project Gutenberg is great and stuff like that. You can do a lot with that sort of material, but you do have to be careful with what you're uploading and where it's going.
And I'll add, it's I'm conflicted about it. There's some tension there. I know Jose Bowen shared in the chat too that more and more people are using it for therapy, for these relationships. I'm using it more for personal coaching, and the more it knows about me, the smarter it is, right? The more it has my information, the better it's going to work. But it has that information. And how many people don't know about memory settings and that you can check your memory? And even if you can, this is all part of AI literacy. And I guess there's no clear answers. It's still a early space, but a complicated space. James, do you want to add your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, so we're at the moment piloting ChatGPT EDU, which is a enterprise version of ChatGPT at the university, and that's sort of something that these companies have come out with and offered as a sort of product or service, which, as Jason mentioned, you pay for, which is we don't train on your data if you pay us the money, which is a kind of interesting sort of scenario to find yourself in, and as a product offering. But some of the messaging around usage has been a bit interesting in terms of how we can and can't interact with even an enterprise model. So there's still dangers and risks with putting in something into an enterprise version of a tool. Even if it doesn't train itself on your data, we still shouldn't be putting in personally identifiable information into it. We shouldn't be putting in student essays that aren't our own, that isn't our intellectual property. So there's all these conflicted kind of I guess questions we have yet to resolve around using AI, which we know has been trained on the internet as it was and is, and material that was copyrighted and used without permission. So it's a very nefarious sort of situation we all find ourselves in that we're all making sense of. But in terms of the memory recall stuff, I sometimes find it quite useful to be able to like talk to a chat GPT that has dealt with my conversations and knows my brain a bit and knows what projects I've been working on. I personally find that really useful, but for some people it irks them, and I understand that that's totally fine. But for me, I enjoy that sort of memory recall, being able to interact with it in that way.
So I have a question for both of you. And I know, James, for example, you mentioned Morpheus. You thought he'd be more popular, but he wasn't. So do you both have any advice on gathering feedback from students on what's working best? Or is it more like you see the chat? I know Jason collects the chat. So what's your top advice on testing your own tools and getting feedback on them from students? James?
Oh yeah, I'll just be very quick, but we put in a survey into the chatbot to get responses. So it was a educator facing bot, so it wasn't for students, but educators were hit and miss with the interactive elements. And another interesting thing was educators hated the Socratic experience. They just wanted the answers. They didn't want to talk back and forth with it. They just wanted to know the stuff. So that I thought was quite interesting. But yeah, putting surveys in are really useful, just capturing how people are interacting with these bots and what they do and don't appreciate. But yeah, interested to hear Jason's thoughts.
Yeah, so in basically all of my classes, I lean heavily on reflection. I lean heavily on if I'm using a chatbot, if I have them using or ask them to use it, I lean heavily on a follow-up reflection from them. And so what I try to do, because I always feel, yeah, like James, as you mentioned, if I ask students, did you like it? Did you not like it? Students can say, oh, I didn't like, say, the Socratic method. They might not like what I think is really valuable, right? Or what I think is like, it's designed to do that. Don't want it to give you answers. So instead, what I do is I don't even couch it that way. I don't give them a survey. I get a lot of information from those reflections themselves. And I asked them, we're really thinking about whether it was of value, right? Did the chatbot help open up your ideas? And asking that question gets much, at least for me, gives me much more valuable information than say, did you like it, right? And so that kind of it's kind of a way for me to, I guess, put my finger on the scale a little bit to get the information that one I think is valuable for students to really think about. Or I do think those reflections are really really essential for building their metacognitive muscles in a way. But then also gives me information about, should I edit that chatbot? Should I dump that chatbot? Right? Sometimes a student might say, well, it really didn't help me, or it just took a lot of agency from me. And I go back and say, oh, I can look at that chat and say, oh, it actually did, right? Like, oh my gosh, I have to change it, or we're just going to get rid of that. And that does happen. That's really, really valuable for me. But for me, those reflections in those metacognitive reflections are the main way that I get information, even without surveying them.
And with just 3 minutes to go, what is your we have about half of registered are just getting started with this. So what beginners or no experience? So what is, I usually close by asking, what is your top advice for someone who is getting started, might be is so excited about what you're showing, but it's a little intimidated. How do I try this with my students or something similar at a smaller scale? James?
Yeah, yeah, I'm really interested to hear Jason's answer too on this. I think my advice is always like test it with what you know, so you can sort of vet what it can and can't do. Test it with an essay you've read well or some material that you've taught before. Test it with your background, and that way you can sort of get a sense of where it's hitting the mark or where it might be missing the mark. But as far as custom GPTs are concerned, they're very easy to build and create. And basically you're just saving a prompt to use again and again. And that process of just using a custom GPT or building a custom GPT can be really useful in terms of how these models think, and how to prompt, and how refining prompts can make prompts better. So just get in there, get your hands dirty, and make a custom GPT. You don't need an account to make a Poe bot. So if you wanted to jump into Poe, you don't need to pay for it. I think you need a subscription to make a custom GPT, unless I'm mistaken. But yeah, interested to hear Jason's thoughts on instructing new users.
I think key number one is this. I think key number one is look at those examples, right? I think that it can be very intimidating to create your own custom chatbot. You'll have examples from James, have examples from me. Just take a look at them, see what you can find. If you find one that seems interesting, you can always, if you can find who created it, you might be able to reach out and get the prompt, right? So just see what happens in the background. Look at those examples. Another thing you can do just to test things out, and this might sound a little weird, but try to build one or try to build a prompt with something like ChatGPT. Go into an AI program, say, I'm thinking about building a custom GPT. This is what I'm sort of thinking of doing. Can you give me a template for doing that? And it might be decent, it might suck, but it gives you a starting point. So you'll have those models in the back of your mind, and then you have something, a model that's probably average, probably middle of the road from ChatGPT, where you just feed it, this is what I want to do with my custom chatbot. This is kind of what I want the output to look like. How can I build it? Build me a template, and it gives you something to work with. And so then from there, I think it's just testing and playing out with custom chatbots. The key, even more so than just prompting in general, is just iteration, iteration, iteration. Because again, you don't have those. The big limit here is you don't have those follow-up messages, right? You can't redirect it. Once it's running, right? So that's the big thing. So I think it's just you play with, you look at the model, look at as much as you can, and then you build and you just test it out and just tweak it from there.
And that was perfect timing. I know we want to talk to you both all day, all the time. But this is wrapping up the session. Thank you so much, Jason and James. What a way to get excited. And now in the summer, it's a great time for testing and trying out things. Or the winter. Yeah, James is in the winter. Wherever you are, it's a great time for tinkering and testing. Thank you on behalf of the whole group. And keep connecting, keep sharing, keep tinkering. Follow work of Jason and James on LinkedIn. And thanks again for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.